Hello, and welcome to our British Cartographic Society Teatime Talk. My name is Chris Tributis. I am the coordinator for the Teatime Talks and today's chair. Today's speaker is Jennifer Johnston, where she will be telling us about Restless Earth, bringing cartography into schools. So with what should be a very interesting talk, I pass you over to Jen.
Thanks, Chris. So as Chris mentioned, my name is Jennifer Johnston, and I've been the coordinator for the British Cartographic Society's Restless Earth program since 2018. And I've been working as a cartographer since 2008. The Restless Earth workshop was created by Peter Jones from the Defense Geographic Center and has since changed hands several times. So hopefully my opinion on the program isn't too biased, and I can honestly say how great I think the Restless Earth workshops are. So let's get started with what is Restless Earth. So Restless Earth is a disaster relief mapping workshop for students year 6 to year 10, and that includes GCSE students. It's adjusted according to the group's ability. So it can be made easier or it can be made difficult. Even on the fly, if things are a little too difficult, then I can make them easier. It's a 2-hour hands-on in-person exercise looking specifically at the Japanese earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear disaster of 2011. The students are divided into teams of 5 and take on the role of coordinator, medical, military, search and rescue, or humanitarian. And each role, as you can see in the box below, has a specific responsibility for what goes on the map. The aim is to work together to create 2 maps, a large scale and a small scale, or in other words, a city map and a regional map of the area of interest to be used by rescue crews, aid agencies, and other first responders from all over the world. So what they need to do is they need to map the flood zone, the nuclear exclusion radius using the scale bar, rulers, and a mathematical compass. In their resource packs, they have various reference maps to find things like hospitals, airports, large buildings to shelter lots of people, main transportation routes, flat space to land helicopters, the overall topography of the area, and anything else that they think is meaningful to the map's purpose. So in their packs, they have all these different reference maps, and then on the maps that they make themselves, they have a basic outline to get started, and they need to line up all of these maps of different scales by using landmarks and prominent features, which maybe some of us who are pre-Google might take for granted, but it's an important skill in even the Google age. So for example, I find it easiest to show them on the regional maps to look for this tailbone-like structure, this peninsula here, and then the large bay area, that is Sendai. And for the city maps, I tell them to look for the main railway station and then this bend in the river that looks kind of like a question mark. Additionally, because the reference maps are in Japanese, they're forced to read the symbology of the maps rather than relying on the text. So looking at building footprints to tell a large building from a small building, finding the medical cross symbol for hospital, recognizing larger roads from smaller ones based on their thickness or prominence of color, and determining highlands from lowlands by the change in tone. This is the basic outline of how the workshops run. They aren't going blindly into this. The workshop starts off with a short presentation, giving some background to the event with pictures to explain why it happened and the level of devastation that we're talking about. We have a mini crash course in cartography to explain the art and design side as well as the science side. I also say that it could be thought of as a language to communicate to people from all over. Ooh, what is going on? One moment. There we go. I also say that it can be thought of as a language to communicate to people from all over the world who are coming together to help the people of Sendai. We'll be using the language of cartography. Cartography can communicate the map story to the reader without the reader having to be able to read the text. A well-done map should be able to interpret by anyone, regardless of language ability. So encouraging students to come up with symbols that play on their reader's interpretation and using colorful colors that have some symbolic significance. This is really handy when dealing with aid agencies coming from all over the world in a disaster situation such as this. So after the presentation, we have time for mapping, and the students sprawl out all over everywhere. We've even had maps end up on the windows. They've, as long as they're gentle with them, I don't mind whatever they have to do. But it's really great that they can get into the map literally and I guess intellectually. So we get into mapping and I give them a time that they have to be completed by, just to add a little bit of pressure so that they don't waste time. And also to add a little bit more pressure, they have to present their findings to the class. So myself and a couple of volunteers are on hand to help them as they go. Yes, this is where they've ended up on the windows. So the maps the students made are collected and judged while they tidy up. The maps are judged based on cartographic design, accuracy, and clarity. How easy would it be for someone who wasn't here today to understand your maps? A winning group from the session is announced and awarded a prize, one prize each. They go on to represent their school in the National British Cartographic Society's Restless Earth competition held every year in September. The students' maps are looked at by a panel of judges, not myself, who are made up of BCS representatives who really weren't there on that day. And they must be able to make sense of the maps for them to be considered for first, second, or third place. A framed certificate is given to first, second, and third place and sent to the school so that they can hang it in their front foyer or awards cabinet, such as this one here. It seems to be a fairly level playing field, even though we're dealing with year 6 all the way up to year 10 GCSE students. The year 6s are given an easier version of the program than the GCSE students. I think everyone can compete fairly, to the point where last year, even the youngest students, although it was a smaller pool because of COVID, they did win first and second place in the national competition, beating out, year 9 and 10 students. Although also between high achieving students and low achieving students, high achieving students often produce amazing maps. And in one particular situation, I was truly blown away. I think it's probably better than a lot of professionals could even do. It was so good. But also underachieving students can be a really fierce competition and can actually win. So for example, a student in one of the last month's workshops caught me in the parking lot while I was loading my car to tell me, I can't believe I won. I'm so bad at everything. And I said, well, you're not bad at mapping, are you? And he said, no, ma'am, I'm not. So that was kind of nice. And another student who I said to her teacher, she just presented her group's maps with such conviction. I said, wow, if I ever need someone to represent me in a court of law, I'm calling that student. And her teacher said, oh, she's usually so quiet in class, she never speaks. When pressed, she just mumbles bare minimum. So it was really good to see her come out of her shell and shock everyone. So yeah, the Restless Earth workshops can be a really nice opportunity for other students who don't normally stand out to get a chance to shine. So benefits to the students, it fulfills some of the GCSE requirements and adds to the curriculum content in map reading, plate tectonics, and natural hazards. Other skills acquired include art and design, teamwork, public speaking, and pulling out meaningful information when presented with an onslaught of information. It can also be a way of introducing students to careers in mapping by meeting people who are working professionally in the mapping industry. So through myself and the volunteers who help me give the workshops, on a personal level, going back to school to study in this area opened up an incredible amount of opportunity that wasn't available at all to me previously. It made such a huge difference, and it made a difference between jobs I just did for money, hoping something better would come along, and having a career that I care about. Not that there's anything wrong with running a rickshaw, it just wasn't for me, and I'm glad I don't have to do it anymore. The volunteers who join me, they come from other parts of the mapping spectrum, and together we cover mapping careers in publishing, government, defense, libraries, and academia. The roles that the students take on during the workshop introduce them to other possible careers in the mapping field. Each role card has an organization connected to it that would require mapping personnel. So like Map Action, Shelter Box, Red Cross, and the United Nations. I hear there's a rumor that Map Action might be making an appearance on Teatime Talks. And what I really like about the workshops, what I think works really well, is having the reference maps in Japanese, forcing the students to read symbology and realizing that they can, having to find where they are on the map and align different maps at different scales, create their own meaningful symbols, and realizing, well, I tell them that because this disaster turned Sendai to rubble, there was nothing left and it had to be rebuilt entirely. So what they see on their phones, on Google Maps, won't help them in this exercise. They have to rely on the paper maps. It's also, I think, a really good exercise to do before going into GIS or even after, because it has the core principles that you need to use a GIS system smartly. So I think it's just a really good way to introduce students to it, but also give them somewhere to build from. So the foundation before they go further. So of course it's not all perfect. There may be some hurdles during the workshop, like initial mass confusion at the beginning of opening up the resource packs. They're jam-packed with information. There's so much information. If they tried to read all of it, it would take them quite a while. But the key responsibilities are summarized in a red box, and they're instructed on what key information to pull out of the maps. They don't have to put everything on their maps, just the information that is relevant to this story. So I assure you, the mass confusion lasts for about maybe 3 to 8 minutes, and it's normal. It's completely part of the process, and I think it's a fair example of what happens in real life, perhaps. And it doesn't take them long to realize that, oh yeah, actually we can do this. Sometimes there might be some heated debates that flare up. I guess that's a sign they take the workshop seriously. And of course, there might be some issues surrounding that only the winning group gets a prize. There isn't a prize for everyone, unfortunately. So I had a student offer me money for a prize, and I had to tell him that that was illegal. But for the most part, it all goes really well, and we have a good time, and we learn a few things about the world of maps. So yeah, I would like to open up for any questions, comments, or feedback.
Right. So thank you very much for that, Jen. That's been a very interesting view and insight of to what Restless Earth consists of. So the first question we have is, how do you acquire the reference maps? Are they donated?
So I think Peter Jones collected them all, and we have digital copies that we can print because they do get torn up with students laying over top of them. So yeah, that's actually probably the most difficult thing. I've thought about a new Restless Earth, and I've come to the conclusion I'm going to have to make them because I can't find maps that suit my purpose. But yeah, I think Peter Jones collected them all, which is a really good resource to have.
No, I have to say it looks like a nice collection that's there, and the fact that it takes
all right, I see someone supplied by the Defense Geographic Center. Yes, that's where he worked. So yeah, I can imagine that's exactly where they came from.
So that's the question. That's one of the questions. Okay, and here we've got the next one. Do you have examples of students who have been bitten by the bug and moved to do geography or cartography? That's a very good question.
Yeah, unfortunately, I only really ever, although I do lots of repeat schools, I only really see the teachers again. I don't see the students, and it's pretty rare that I find out anything more about them. But I really do hope they have. And I've seen a lot of people have become really encouraged by the workshops, realizing that this is something that they're interested in, something that could be a job for them.
Yeah, I suppose it's always the difficulty of trying to catch them at school when they'll be moving on naturally, and you'll be meeting the next wave of them. So hopefully some will have taken up an interest and worked their way into geography or cartography, even better.
I tried to direct them towards map action because there's volunteer opportunities. Once they get familiar with GIS, they can continue on at home at their own pace, perhaps.
Okay, so we've got another. Okay, so we've got so next question we have. So, are there any other test cases, or are there or is the Japan example the main task? And a good question I was going to ask myself is how do you take on volunteers, which is really a key part of this.
All right, well, I'll do the volunteers portion first, because that's the most important part. The volunteers are so important, and anyone can get involved. You just have to be interested in maps and love them. Just send me an email, or you can contact through the website to the general email address, and I can add you to the volunteer list. You don't have to volunteer every single one. What I do is I just send out a call for volunteers, and if it's an area that's convenient for you, then you can sign up, or if you have the time, you can sign up, and the BCS covers your travel expenses, so hopefully it won't be any cost to you. And I really want to do a Nepal 2011 earthquake one, which I've just started working on, but it gets quite busy, so it hasn't gone that far. But I really like the idea of the Nepal earthquake because it's extreme. You have to get people off of Mount Everest, and you also have the city situation where Kathmandu has damage. There's avalanches, there's an earthquake, so it covers plate tectonics. And also it would make sense for the maps not to be in English. That's probably my favorite part of the workshop, because it forces the students to read the symbology. I've had other suggestions, such as doing flooding of rivers and something more UK related, but I'm not sure. I guess I'm torn because I'm not sure how interesting flooding would be to a 14-year-old. Whereas the Sendai thing, you know, there's an explosion, nuclear radiation, tidal waves, and an earthquake.
I think it's just the fact that there's still a lot of dramatic elements which just draw them in that little bit more to the activity. Okay, so another question we have: are there any plans to make a digital version?
I tried out a digital version at the GA conference when I think we were in lockdown, and it was okay, but the beauty of this program is it's so hands-on, and I think it just works really well as a hands-on activity, and it's also really difficult to tell, you know, have I lost anyone? You know, sometimes you only see like a student's forehead and you don't really know, you know, how they're getting on. So it is possible, and I do have one ready, but myself, I just think the practical version is so much more rewarding.
Yeah, so at the looks of it, looks of the pictures that you had, the fact that literally covering every surface to look at the maps and to try complete the task, and it's very difficult to do that in a digital environment, particularly with those age groups.
Yeah. So
yes, that's been a lot of it. I think we've been giving a lot of good information to people, and if anyone else has any further questions, we've got one more. It's how does a school get to be selected? Does it rely on a keen geography teacher reaching out to you, or do you reach out to the schools? And if so, how do you make a choice of which schools to visit? Which is probably this is a very good question.
Yeah. I generally schools contact me. The program or the workshops are promoted by the British Cartographic Society on social media, and we go to the GA conference and promote it there. I also post on some of the Geography Teacher UK Facebook pages to try and encourage schools to sign up. And pretty much it's first come, first serve. Whichever school commits to a date first, they get that date. And I yeah, once the month is full, then I'll have to suggest another date. But yeah, it's pretty much first come, first serve.
So enthusiasm is a key attribute in that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so another question, again, back to the topic of volunteers. Are you short of volunteers? Is there anything else that would help with the program?
I would love to have more volunteers to call on. We do workshops all over the UK, and so we need volunteers from all over the UK to help make it work. So yes, I'm always looking for volunteers. And to help the program, I guess letting people know it exists. If you think anyone might be interested, maybe point it out to them. Let me know any feedback you have about the program, or if you've had a workshop, I'd love to know what you thought worked or didn't work. But yeah, I think it's just letting teachers especially know that it exists, and yeah, and we can come to your school anywhere in the UK.
Okay, so thanks for that. No, I think so. The key message we have is, yes, we need a lot of we need a lot of volunteers, and we need the word to be spread. Another good question is, for volunteers, do they need prior DBS checks?
No. So we are never alone with the students. There is always at least one teacher in the room, if not more. So because of that, we don't need DBS checks. And we don't roam freely around the school. We're always accompanied by a teacher.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know. And answers like one question which might keep people back. That's there's less hurdles for people to get involved and assist with the work.
Yeah, we try to make it easiest as possible. So for example, if there's one and you're going to take the train and think, oh, it's too far to walk, I'm happy to pick anyone up at the train station if you need a lift. We're just really happy to have anyone help out. It helps a lot, and it's we realize your time is extremely valuable and you're giving up probably some of your work day to do this, and you're putting in the effort, so we like to make it as easy as possible.
Okay, thanks very much for that. So yes, again, it's we are very appreciative of anyone that wants to take part and contribute, and as we've now, I'll make sure the details are available when we put this video up on YouTube, so that so you'll be able to contact Jen directly.
Yeah. Sorry, Chris, I just wanted to mention, I think it would be a great opportunity for people maybe in their last year of university or who have just graduated and are looking for something to put on their resume. It's a way to get experience, and if you need a letter of reference, I'm happy to do that. So yeah, I think it would be a great opportunity for higher education students to take advantage of.
Okay, no, that's another.
I've had to ask a question, but you don't seem to have got it.
Oh. Well, what's your question?
Do you have an example of a student map to show us?
Oh, I've got tons. One moment. Sorry. Let's see. So there we go. Okay. So it's hard to see, but they've got the flood zone in lines, and it's quite precise, which is what I like about the map, and it's quite tidy. And they've got their key over here. And then here is the regional map. So they've got their airports up there, and then a major motorway that goes all the way to Sendai. They've got the higher elevation in these green hatches. They've got their flood zone in blue hatches, and they've got the legend or key over here. But there's also on the web page, the Restless Earth banner is made up.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Jen, the banner you're mentioning?
Sorry.
You mentioned.
Oh, right. Yes. So if you want to see more examples, there are some. There's some on our social media, the BCS maps, and there's also on the Restless Earth webpage. If you go through the British Cartographic Society page, the banner is made up of student-made maps, and a few of my slides had some examples. Yeah, they're all. Some of them are really interesting and quite unique, and yeah, they all managed to complete the exercise. I haven't had anyone yet who hasn't completed it. So.
Okay. One last comment here. It's helping out is also a good continual professional development opportunity for chartered geographer, AGI, and other things like that. So that's also another
yes.
great benefit.
Get the word out to people pursuing that.
Yes. Okay. So again, thank you very much, Jen, for that. That's been very informative and given us a good understanding of Restless Earth. I want to thank everyone else for joining us. That's been. I hope you've been able to get a lot out of this one. And as Jen did allude to, next month's talk is expected to be from Map Action, the humanitarian mapping charity. So that's a nice follow-on from this one as well. So we want to thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. So for today, thank you and goodbye.